There are cars that simply exist as used vehicles, and then there are cars that represent a turning point in automotive history, machines that marked the beginning of a new era for an entire brand. This 1955 Chevrolet 210 unquestionably belongs to the latter category. Call it what you want, a project, a forgotten classic, an overlooked gem, but you must agree that this particular Chevrolet is more than just old sheet metal sitting in a driveway in Salem, Oregon. It is a rolling piece of American automotive history, a symbol of the moment when Chevrolet stepped confidently into the V8 age and changed the trajectory of its lineup forever. Today, however, it finds itself in a far less glamorous situation. It needs a new home. It needs someone willing to look beyond its current condition and see the legacy beneath the surface. And yet, buyers continue to walk away without looking back. At first glance, the hesitation seems puzzling. The 1955 model year was monumental for Chevrolet. It was not merely another annual refresh with minor trim changes or new paint colors. Instead, it represented a fundamental transformation of the brand's engineering philosophy. Chevrolet introduced a revised chassis that improved handling and ride quality, making the cars more modern and competitive in a rapidly evolving market. But the biggest and most significant update was not something you could immediately see from the outside. It was what lay under the hood. For the first time, Chevrolet buyers could order their cars with a V8 engine. That single change altered everything. The introduction of the 265 cubic inch small block V8 was a defining moment not only for Chevrolet, but for General Motors as a whole. Compact, lightweight, and powerful for its size, the 265 marked the birth of what would become one of the most legendary engine families in automotive history. This engine would evolve, grow, and ultimately give rise to icons like the 283 Turbofire, solidifying Chevrolet's reputation as a performance powerhouse. The 265 cubic inch V8 produced 165 horsepower in its standard configuration. For the mid-1950s, that was a respectable figure, more than enough to transform the driving experience compared to the inline-six engines that had previously dominated Chevrolet's lineup. But the real excitement came with the optional upgrades. Equipped with a 4-barrel carburetor and a dual exhaust system, and packaged together in what Chevrolet called the Power Pack, output jumped to 180 horsepower. In an era when horsepower figures were steadily climbing and American drivers were beginning to crave more performance, this was a game-changing development. The V8 was available across the Chevrolet lineup, including the entry-level 150 series. However, the 150 was typically purchased by buyers who were primarily focused on affordability. A V8 added cost, and many 150 buyers preferred to keep their cars simple and economical. The 210 and the Bel Air, on the other hand, were more likely to be optioned with the new V8. These trims catered to customers who wanted a balance of style, comfort, and performance. The 210 in particular occupied a sweet spot in the lineup, offering a more upscale feel than the 150 without reaching the higher price point of the Bel Air. This brings us back to the car currently sitting in Salem, Oregon. According to its VIN, it is indeed a 1955 Chevrolet 210. More importantly, the VIN confirms that it was born with a V8 under the hood. That detail alone should be enough to pique the interest of collectors and enthusiasts. Original V8 cars are always more desirable than those converted later in life. Authenticity matters in the classic car world, and a factory V8 210 carries a certain weight. Under the hood, a 265 cubic inch V8 still appears to reside. Whether it is the original, numbers-matching engine is another question entirely. Without physically checking casting numbers and engine stampings, it is impossible to say with certainty. For any serious buyer, this is a crucial step. A quick phone call to the seller to request detailed information and photos of the engine numbers could clarify the matter. If the car retains its original engine, that would significantly enhance its appeal and long-term value. Beyond the engine, the car is very much a project. It is not currently roadworthy. The seller openly acknowledges that it requires substantial work before it can move under its own power again. Prospective buyers will need a trailer to transport it home. For some, that fact alone is enough to end the conversation. They see the logistics, the effort, the unknown expenses, and decide to look elsewhere. And that is exactly what has been happening. The car has been trying to find a buyer for some time. Interest may flicker briefly when someone notices the year, the model, the V8 designation. But once they assess the condition and consider the asking price, enthusiasm fades. People walk away without looking back. It is not necessarily a reflection of the car's historical importance. Instead, it is a reminder of the delicate balance between nostalgia and practicality in the classic car market. The owner has taken steps to make the car more appealing. Several important components have already been replaced, including the fuel tank, spark plugs, and fuel pump. These are not cosmetic upgrades. They are functional improvements aimed at bringing the car closer to a potential return to the road. They demonstrate a willingness to invest time and money into the vehicle rather than simply offloading it in completely neglected condition. While the car still needs extensive repairs, these updates suggest that it is not beyond saving. Anyone who has spent time in the classic car world knows that far worse vehicles have been resurrected. Rusted shells with no drivetrains have been painstakingly restored. Cars pulled from fields after decades of exposure have been transformed into show-winning machines. Compared to those extreme cases, this 1955 Chevrolet 210 does not seem hopeless. It requires work, yes, but it remains largely intact. The bones are there. The historical significance is undeniable. The potential is real. So why are buyers walking away? The most obvious answer appears to be the price. Initially listed at $11,500, the car may have seemed too expensive given its condition and the work required. Classic car buyers are often calculating the total investment in their heads. They see the purchase price as only the beginning. Restoration costs can quickly spiral into tens of thousands of dollars, especially if bodywork, paint, drivetrain rebuilds, and interior restoration are needed. Faced with those numbers, even a historically significant car can lose its immediate appeal. Recognizing this, the owner recently dropped the asking price by $1,500, bringing it down to $10,000. In the world of classic cars, that is not a minor adjustment. It signals motivation. It suggests that the seller understands the market response and is willing to negotiate within reason. Whether this new price point will generate renewed interest remains to be seen. For the right buyer, it could represent an opportunity rather than a risk. Location also plays a role. The car is parked in Salem, Oregon. For local buyers, that may be convenient. For others across the country, it introduces additional transportation costs and logistical considerations. Shipping a non-running vehicle is not as simple as arranging a standard auto transport. The need for a trailer and possibly specialized equipment to load and unload the car adds complexity. Some potential buyers may simply prefer a project that is closer to home. Still, it is difficult to ignore what this car represents. The 1955 Chevrolet lineup marked the beginning of the now famous Tri-5 era, encompassing the 1955, 1956, and 1957 models. Among enthusiasts, these cars are revered for their styling, performance potential, and cultural impact. They became staples of hot rod builds, drag racing scenes, and nostalgic restorations. Even today, decades later, they command attention at car shows and auctions. The 210 often lives slightly in the shadow of the more glamorous Bel Air. The Bel Air's extra chrome and upscale trim made it the darling of the showroom. But many enthusiasts appreciate the 210 for its understated character. It offers the same fundamental engineering and mechanical potential without some of the flash. In some cases, that makes it even more appealing as a project platform, especially for those who envision performance upgrades or custom builds. Imagine this particular 210 restored to its former glory. The 265 V8 rebuilt and tuned, perhaps even upgraded with period-correct performance components. The chassis refreshed to take full advantage of the 1955 improvements. The body straightened, painted in a classic mid-1950s Chevrolet color. The interior reupholstered to match its original configuration. It would no longer be a car that buyers walk away from. It would be a car that draws crowds. Of course, such a transformation requires vision, patience, and financial commitment. Not everyone is prepared to take that leap. Some buyers want turnkey classics, cars they can drive home immediately and enjoy without months or years of work. Others seek projects, but at rock-bottom prices that leave plenty of room in the budget for restoration. This 210 sits somewhere in between. It is not a bargain basement shell, but it is not a ready-to-drive cruiser either. In many ways, it embodies the crossroads at which so many classic cars find themselves. Its past is glorious, its present uncertain, and its future dependent on finding the right caretaker. The introduction of the 265 V8 in 1955 was a bold statement from Chevrolet. It announced that the brand was ready to compete not just on affordability, but on performance and innovation. This car is a direct descendant of that moment. For enthusiasts who understand the significance of the first-generation small-block V8, this 210 should not be dismissed lightly. The 265 may not have the displacement of later engines, but its historical importance cannot be overstated. It laid the foundation for decades of Chevrolet performance, from street machines to race cars. Owning a 1955 V8 car is, in a sense, owning the origin story of an automotive legend. Perhaps the right buyer has simply not come along yet. Classic car sales often depend on timing as much as condition or price. A car can sit unnoticed for months, then suddenly capture the attention of someone who has been searching for exactly that year, that model, that configuration. When that connection happens, the hesitation disappears. The buyer no longer walks away. Instead, they see possibility where others saw problems. This 1955 Chevrolet 210 is waiting for that moment. It may currently be parked, silent, and in need of repair, but its story is far from over. The revised chassis of 1955, the groundbreaking 265 V8, the power pack performance upgrade, the sweet spot positioning of the 210 trim. These elements combine to create something special. Whether at $11,500 or $10,000, the true value of the car depends on perspective. Some will continue to walk away, unwilling to take on the challenge. Others may pause a little longer, consider the history, and imagine the finished product. In the end, this Chevrolet does not need everyone's approval. It needs one buyer who understands what the biggest 1955 update really meant and who is willing to carry that legacy forward.